Good day, everyone. Thank you very much for joining today's webinar, which is a part 2 of the 4-part series. If you missed part 1, please just go check it out. It will be on our YouTube channel playlist. I believe it will be under the data analytics playlist, and then you can just follow everything so you don't lose track of what we're doing here. Just to recap, part 1 was how to create a SQL query using the graphical join interface in SQL Server Management Studio, and also how to do a join in Power BI with a relationship model. So for today, I'm going to show you how to use that view that you copied and pasted and then store it in SQL Server Management Studio in order to use it at a later stage. I'm not going to use the graphical join in this part. I'm just going to write the query out or type it out, and then we're going to add a little bit of fat to it, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And then I'm going to show you how to use that view in Power BI. Then I'm going to create a stored procedure with one parameter, a very basic parameter, and then show you how to use that parameter and query your database live from Power BI. Okay, so a view, how I always define it, is a virtual table that you create because we're taking existing tables and putting them together to create a new table so that we can access later and get a data result set. Why we'd want to create views is because not all data is stored in one table in a database. It's stored in various tables, and you want to create a consolidated view, hence the word a view of relevant information. Hence, you want to see all your accounts payables, how the aging is doing. You want to see your aging of your accounts receivables. You can build these relevant views to your preference. So I'm going to follow the example as what we did with the first one, is joining the business account to the accounts receivable transactions. So I'm just going to write the query out for this one. I already know the tables very well, so I'm going to write this very quick, and then I'm just going to explain to you what I am doing here. So I'm first going to write my script by saying, so select all the columns from B account, and then inner join ARtron on ARtron dot customer ID equals B account dot B account ID, and there we go. So that's how I can do the join. If I execute this, it's going to give it to me. And then as you can see there, there's all the companies and there's all the relevant accounts. And if I go on, it'll show me all my transaction values. Okay, but now I only want to see some relevant information. As an example, I only want to see from the BA account table, I only want to see the ACCT name, which is the account name. Perhaps I also want to see the account CD, which is also the account code. That's all I want to see from the BA account table. Then from the ARtron table, I would definitely want to see the Tron date. I'd want to see the Tron amount. Then I want to see the Tron cost, so we can work out gross profit. Let's maybe scroll to that table and see what else is in here that's important. The Tron description. Yes, let's maybe put that in there, the Tron description. And of course, the inventory. But wait, I don't want to see the inventory ID. I want to see the inventory name. Okay, so what I'm going to have to do now is, I'm just going to leave that comma there. I'm going to join in the inventory table. So now I can say inner join inventory item on inventory item dot inventory ID equals, and this is my main table. I want to join it on this table because it's on my transaction list. Remember that. Dot inventory ID. Now, when I execute this, the tables of the headers are going to become a lot more. And then if I run all the way that side, I'm going to start seeing inventory names. So there's software licenses, software maintenance, and so on. There's all my stuff, Blow, speaker, headset, Coca-Cola cans, and so on. So I don't want to see the inventory anymore. I want to see inventory dot description. And now, when I see that, I'm happy with that. And I think that's all I want to see for now. I've got my Tron date, I've got my Tron amount, I've got my Tron description, and so on. Let's execute only these columns that I've selected. And then I've got my information here. I'm happy with this. This is my account overview and what items were sold. Okay, but now I want to add a little bit of fat to it. So I want to add a little bit more stuff to it. I do not like this wording. It says ACTT name. Perhaps I want to give it an alias saying customer name. And then the same will go for BA account as customer code. And now I can say the same for Tron date as just date. I just wanted to call it date. And then the Tron amount, I just want to call amount. And then the cost, I want to call just cost. And then a description, I want to call transaction description. And then the same can apply for inventory description, because otherwise it's going to be too DESCR, so we don't want to get confused. And now I'm going to say inventory item as, and I'm going to say inventory item name. All right, once I'm happy with that, I can execute this. And now we can just see everything that's there. It seems to me that the transaction description and the inventory description is also exactly the same. There might be some differences every now and then. This database is a demo database, so it makes sense that they don't want to make it too complicated. So it seems to me there is a little bit something, prepaid hours, support hours, and that's the inventory item that you want to use. There is, however, one thing that I am missing in here, which is very, very important, and I'll put it off today, is a transaction type. So I want to see if it's a credit note, if it's a debit note, an invoice, and so on. So now I can just say this is called transaction type, close it, comma, and there we go. And once I'm happy with it, I can execute it. There we go. Now it's telling me what is a credit note, what is a CSL. These are just all the various types of transactions. But the only transactions I'm interested in is, I don't really care about these CSL transactions, okay? The only ones that I care about are the credit note memos and the invoices. You know, what money came in and what came back, or what did we sell and what came back, or what was sent as returns. So this is where I can build a where clause. So now I'm going to say where the Tron type is in INV and CRM. So the in just tells us is take all of these columns from these tables where in that table of AR Tron, the Tron type is only equal to INV and CRM. That is how this view is generated. And I want you to have a look at this rows. It's showing 8,320. And now if I run it, it should be a lot less, 8,066, because now I only have CRM and INV. Okay, if you're happy with this result, this is the part where you're going to create your view. So if you want to write the code, you can simply say create view. We're going to give it a name, and we're going to say client sales as this. So we're just telling SQL, listen, create a view that's called client sales based on this information. This is how we talk to SQL. It's the same as taking your account or the column name and saying you take this as that. So all I'm saying is you're going to create a view that I want to use later called client sales as this. And then when you execute, it will tell you commands have completed successfully, which means the view has been stored. Now comes the question, why would I want to do that? So the main reason you'd want to create a view is so that when you execute, you can only say select all from client sales, instead of saving this every single time and copying and pasting it, or saving it as a file and opening it and running it each time. Let me show you what I mean by I'm going to execute or select everything from client sales. When I go to new query, I'm going to say select all from client sales. And now you're going to see, pick up something. It's not showing because this should pop up because it's a new object I've created in SQL Server. The only reason why it's showing that red squiggly line is because the objects haven't refreshed. So there's a cool shortcut I can tell you. It's Control-Shift-R, and then it refreshes all your objects in your database or in the whole server. So now you can see the red squiggly is gone because it picked up. And now when I say execute, it will execute the same result as this whole query. So if I just run this one, it'll give you the exact same result, 8,066, 8,066, but it's not all this hang and lots of code. So imagine a view that had like 100 lines of code as an example, whereby you pull 30 columns in, you did a lot of calculations and aggregations and changes and manipulation. Then you can rather just say, create this view that I just generated here with these result sets, with these columns as that. And this just makes it a lot easier, manageable. This is how you can access your view by writing a select clause immediately and executing it, or you can go to the left-hand side on your Object Explorer pane to the database, and you can click on Views, and I can just quickly say refresh, and there's my client sales. So that's where you can access it. You can right-click it, and you can say View Script as Create To or Alter. So the alter means you want to change it. I'm going to show you what I mean by changing it. So let's say I'm happy with this view now, okay? And this is what I've got now, but I want to change it. The way you can do it, you can right-click on this view right here, and you can say View Script As and Alter To a new query window. So now SQL generates this little code that it needs to know, and now it's saying Alter View. Let's say I would like to bring in the salesperson. Now I can say inner join salesperson on salesperson dot salesperson ID equals, and it will be on my transaction list dot salesperson ID. So once I've brought in the salesperson, I just need to bring in the name. So let's quickly bring in the name. Salesperson dot salesperson ID, or rather the description. Let's rather get the name as salesperson. And voila. If you're happy with this, you can simply just click execute. Now what SQL did is it literally took that view I created and we just altered it. We made changes to it. I added another table to it and I added another column to my select statement. Now when I run it here, I'm expecting another column, and would you know it, I have another column in there. So now I've got more information, but notice there, the list got less by almost 1,000. Remember, that's what an inner join does, okay? Which means it didn't get an exact match from the salesperson table to the transaction table. So it means we have 1,000 items missing, okay? But for today's purposes, I'm not going to deep dive into the data changes and manipulation and validation. I just want to show you how to create the view. But if I had to rectify this, I would have rather made this a left join. So keep everything from this main select. And if you don't find a match, place it as a null value instead of removing it. So that is how simple it is to create a view from scratch if you want to write your code. And of course, if you want to alter it, you go to your database, to your views. If it's not there, you can click refresh. And then you right click on your view and you can simply say alter to a new query window, and SQL will already generate the code for you. And then you can just add your tables and add your columns as well. But let's say you want to first have a view of everything. What I usually do is I first just go and make a new query window and I select all from salesperson. So if I want to have a look first at what it gives me, then I can see, oh, okay, I can join it on ID, and then I can just write my inner join as well there. So that is how you create a view in SQL Server Management Studio. So remember, the reasons why you want to have a view is so that you don't have to save this code somewhere in a notepad or somewhere in your desktop or even things. God forbid you do that, but write it down and so you can remember it. You can simply just write the code and just store it as a single view. So when you run it, it will just show to you as such. All right. So I'm going to do the part where I'm going to pull a view and a stored procedure from Power BI together. So I'm going to jump into the next part of the second part is creating a stored procedure. Okay, so what is a stored procedure? There are many definitions out there. There's a lot of textbooks definitions, a lot of excellent DBAs out there that have given good definitions. So I'm just going to give you my definition of what I understand a procedure is. A procedure is a set of rules and steps you've put in place based on your business process or your business preferability of data extraction, consolidation, and manipulation. Okay, I just put that extra 2 stuff there at the end, but it does play a role there. The main thing is the set of business rules that the data needs to follow in order to get the correct result set. As an example, I'm not going to write a very big one, but I have written some hectic procedures whereby we had to do some bank balance reconciliations and check bank balances against this account. If it doesn't match that account, then store it in a different table. Then we have to go to that table and validate which accounts are wrong. Then you can take that information, then place it there. It's a lot of rules you can put in place. And it can get very tricky, stored procedures. You can get stored procedures that can run through the thousands of lines or tens of lines or hundreds of lines. It can go as far as it wants. But another cool thing about a stored procedure is it really calculates a lot faster because it has to go through that set of rules and it needs to work properly through it. But of course, it doesn't say if you run a stored procedure against a 10 million or a billion row database, it's going to go quick. Remember, SQL Server is very hardware intensive as well. It needs that CPU and RAM for storage as well. And of course, SSD plays a big role in writing and reading the data faster. So another main reason why you'd want to create a stored procedure is because of the great word that is called parameters. So parameter is a set rule that you can use against the filtered list of your result set. Okay. It sounds a bit complicated, but imagine this. If I define a parameter saying a client code, and I place it in the where clause, instead of saying where the client code equals, let's use this as an example. And I'm just going to remove this now. And now we're going to go to BA account CD equals. And now if I just take anyone, let's take ABC Studios, and I place it there, and now I execute it, it's just going to bring me ABC Studios. But now I have to type it every single time here in the hard code. A parameter makes it very nice for you, whereby you can choose each and single time what you want to see, and then it will run it against that parameter that you chose. Okay, maybe I'm just going to dive into it, and I'm just going to write a stored procedure for you against roughly the same information. So I'm just going to take this out, and I'm going to copy this. So the same information that's in the view, I'm going to copy that main information, and I'm going to say new query. I'm going to paste it there, but I'm going to put a little bit something extra. I'm going to say create procedure. You can either write the whole word, or you can just say proc. I'm old school, create procedure. We're going to have to give it a name, and we're going to call it client sales. I just like to put an underscore. And now we have to give it a parameter. If we don't give it a parameter, I would just write it as like this. But this is exactly the same as a view. Because remember, the main reason we want to use a procedure is to do a pass-by parameter. So in order to do a parameter, you simply define it by the @ sign. Okay. Now, I want this data to filter on the client of my choice. If I say, show me all the results for ABC Studios, I just want to type in ABC Studios and it gives me the results. Or you only want to do it against a salesperson. I want to see everything against John Doe. I just type in John Doe, it gives you the result set. Without typing in there each and every time, and salesperson dot description equals John Doe. Oh, I made a mistake. Sorry, there's no John Doe. Then you tell that to your boss, and good luck, because he knows that there's a John Doe. So rather give the end user the option to choose how the results should be filtered. That is the main reason, also another reason for parameter. So defining a parameter in a procedure is with an @ sign, and you have to give it a name. So I want to give my parameter a name by saying client code. And now it needs to know, is client code a character, a variable character? How long is the characters? How many letters or words are in it? Is it an integer, which means is it only a number? Is it a date? In this case, it's called a varchar. So it's a variable character, and I'm going to give it a max amount of 12 characters. So this is where you're telling it, you're going to create this variable that is only 12 characters long. You can say as. Now, that's how my procedure has been created. Okay. But I'm not done as yet. Okay. Because I need to pass this parameter through this filtered list, because how will the procedure know I need to use where to use client code? So this is where, instead of me saying equals ABC Studios, So let's go BA account dot ACCTCD equals ABC Studios, I'm joking, equals my parameter. So look how smart SQL is. If I say at, and I start typing client code, it already picks it up as a parameter. Now, I always say it's like a parameter because it looks like a little button. Okay, you'll see that little button there. I say it looks like a button. I really don't know what it is actually called. It looks like a button to me because you want to press it. Find this, and you like press it. So then I say add client code. And now my procedure is completed. So I'm running the exact same information that's going to be used for my view, but I'm just giving a little bit of fat to it. You know, I'm saying where the client code equals whatever I choose in that little block. Let me execute it and just show you how to use it. So I'm going to execute this now. Now it will say completed successfully. And I'm just going to go to this blank one. Now I want to go execute it. So hence the word execute. If you want to use a procedure, you always have to type the word execute. You can either say proc, or you can just say execute procedure, and you give it a name. But in this case, you can just say execute, and then you give the proc's name. So we call the proc's name, we'll just have a look, client sales. So I can just copy that, paste it there, and it's still not working. I wonder why. Cannot find stored procedure client sales, but I just executed it. Remember, if you followed me in part one, or if you watched part one, that's why I gave a very cool hint or little tip or trick, which is how you can refresh all your objects. So it's a keyboard shortcut saying Control-Shift-R, and what that does is it just refreshes everything. Now it's also giving me, but now it's not saying it can't find it anymore. Okay. Now it's telling me that it found it, but it's telling me, listen, Francois, there's a parameter in here. I see that you created a parameter, so you have to tell me what the parameter is. So I'm saying the parameter is client code equals the client name. So I'm just going to go and look at my client list quickly. So let's go look at my BA account. And I'm just going to choose a random one here. Let's maybe choose this one, FDR agree. It looks like there's some information there. And I'm just going to paste it. Let's take out the spaces and execute. And voila. Now what they did is it ran this whole thing that I created here, or this information, based on what I said the client code should equal. So I said client code equals, let's just see what that was called, FDR agree. But in this case, FDR agree is equal to whatever I place there. So whatever I put in there, it will put it there in the where clause, which will filter my results set. Now that's very cool. And that's where you can use your parameters. Now I can use as many parameters as I want. So remember earlier when I mentioned that your procedure can be 1,000 lines, 100 lines, it doesn't matter how long, even your views. Now this is where parameters play a big role, because somewhere along the line in, let's say, row 352, you want that result to be filtered on the parameter list in 4 of 20. So instead of you saying equals this every single time. Now, you can imagine now as an example too, if client code, whereby I use this one, this filter was equals ABC Studios on, let's say, line 200, then line 600, then line 800, it's impossible to keep track. That's where parameters will really help, because parameters will filter everywhere where that sign is used. It will filter what you chose. So parameters also help a lot with admin in keeping it nice and clean and making it more understandable. So if I wanted to add another parameter for, let's say, salesperson, I can add it. But in this case, I only want to use one parameter because I'm only concerned with the customer code, because I know my customer codes very well. In inverted commas, let's say I was the debtors clerk, whatever, I know the customers quite well. So if I want to edit the procedure, it's exactly the same as the views. You go to programmability and you click on stored procedures. So remember, views, it's in the views folder. Stored procedures in the programmability folder under stored procedures folder. Now you'll see there's already a hell of a lot of stored procedures in here. This is already system generated stored procedures, but I'm more concerned with this client sales one that I just created. And you can right click on it and you can just say modify, whereby we set in the views alter to new query window. We just say here modify. And now it will put it in the alter procedure mode. So if you don't want to go this long route, you can also just simply say, yeah, alter procedure. and you can make changes to your procedure as well. But what's very cool is you already have a view in a procedure with parameters. So I can just add more facts to this thing or more information to it, and it will work perfect. Okay. So that is how you create views and a stored procedure and why we need to use them and why we have them. If you start working a lot with data, especially in my field where we are very busy with it every single day, I basically live in SQL Management Studio. You start understanding how important these are. You know when to use a procedure instead of using a view, or you know when to rather build a view instead of just working at the tables directly. Let me show you first how to connect the view. I'm going to say OK. So very easy. The views are always on top because it's seen as, I would not say more important, but it's seen as a lot more important than tables. Yeah, let's just go with it is more important. So currently there's only 2 views and the rest are tables. How I know it's a view, it will have these little 2 windows there. And then a normal table will just have these little, like an Excel spreadsheet thing there. So views will always be on top, okay? Because SQL and Power BI and BI tools know that it's usually a lot more important than just tables itself because it's already been combined and joined or consolidated. I can simply click on connecting to it. I can transform it if I want to change the date range, maybe do some manipulation and so on, or I can simply just click load. And once it's done, instead of me joining like in part 1, I said the account with this one to the relationship is being done in SQL itself. So let SQL do all the work and then bring back the information for me. And if you look on the right-hand side, there's my information. And I can start building my reports if I want to. So if I want to see by customer name, let's say customer code, a customer name, and then we want to see the amount, the cost, and then of course the transaction type. So the view did all the work for me, but now I've got my holistical view and I can really see we made a big profit there because my cost is less than the amount that was sold. And then from here, I can just do calculations whereby you can create measures, DAX formulas saying, give me the total sales over the period of time and so on. As an example, I can build a nice line graph now if I want to show time series, so data over time. I can choose the month, hierarchy, and I can say, show me by month, and then show me the amount, and then that's it. And there we go. Now I can see it's always got a big, nice trend. It's going up. And then very understandable December sales declined quite big. And then I can also compare it to dual over the cost. I want to see how that is. I can see there's a nice gap there. That's very good. It's showing that there's good profitability every single month for me. So this is what you can do with your view because you already have your view that was generated through SQL, your view right over here. But now I want to analyze it, and that's where Power BI comes in. So remember, it's not just Power BI. You can use many other tools as well. I'm just focusing on Power BI because it is the best. So that is how you can connect your view and see your information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove these visualizations, and I'm going to jump into the little bit of technical side of how to run a parameterized stored procedure through Power BI. So bear with me. This is going to use query editor mode, which is also known as mQuery language, but it's not very difficult. The mQuery language has really progressed very well. They've got its own built-in IntelliSense and everything, and that's kind of the fastest and easiest way to run a parameter, so dynamically, which I'm going to explain to you right now. So first things first, if you want to execute a procedure through Power BI, you need to connect to your data source. So we're going to do the same as we did with the view, but just a little bit differently. FMPC is my server name, and then the database, I need to paste it in there as well. I need to define it because now I'm going to go to advanced options. And I'm going to give a SQL statement, and it says it does require the database because how will it ever know which database you're going to connect to? And I'm going to go to SQL, and I'm going to go to this one, and I'm just going to copy that whole thing. And I'm going to go back, and I'm going to paste there. So technically, I'm doing the exact same thing, but I'm doing it through a BI tool. Remember, you always have to define a default value for the parameter, because otherwise it won't give me a result set because the SQL server won't know what the client code is. So it won't just bring you everything by default. You have to give it a default value. In this case, I'm just working with this FDI agri default value. And you're going to say, okay, it's going to do its thinking, it's going to do its magic, and it's going to populate my data. Exactly as it shows here, it's showing it to me in the BI tool. And if I'm happy with it, I can load it. Or in this case, we're going to transform it a bit. We're going to go to the T side of the ETL. And it's going to open up my Power Query editor mode or my Power Query editor. And this is where you can do some changes. I'm just going to show you some basic examples. If you have followed our previous videos, I showed you some great tips and tricks you can do. I do see they've got Azure machine learning in there now. That is fantastic. Yes, they just keep bringing new stuff. I see it was always just R scripts. Now Python is there and everything. It's really, really cool. Let's say I just want to change the date. This is a very basic step. I don't want to see the time because it's all 000. I only want to see the date. You change it, then Power Query creates the steps that you want to do. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another step. So I'm just going to give this a nice name. Let's perhaps give this, let's just say, client sales by code as an example. Okay. And there we go. It's been changed. There's our view. It's still there. And now I want to place my parameter. So before we can do it, we need to build a parameter first. So Power BI also has its own options whereby you can build your own parameters if you want to create the data within Power BI itself. But that's not what we want to do today. We want to create the data from our data source and then bring the results back so that I can work with. So we need to say manage parameters, and I'm going to say new parameter. And I'm going to call this parameter client code. And I'm going to say the type, it is going to be text, okay? Suggested values, it's going to be a list of values, or let's just say any value in this case. I don't want to define the list. I want the list for me to decide because I don't want to choose from a list. I want to type in the code of the customer, hence here, and then it must bring back the results. So once again, you can't just say, okay, it is going to tell you it needs a default value. Please enter a value. So I am literally going to take this FDI agree, and I'm going to give it the same default value. Remember the same thing we did with the stored procedure. When you execute, you have to define it. And I'm going to say, okay. And now you'll see it showing it over here like this. And I'm going to go to the advanced editor on this one. And it's just telling me that, listen here, this is what it is. Now, this over here is mQuery. This is another coding level manipulator within Power BI. And this is where you can just do some more changes to the code. But I'm more concerned with the result set because if I go to my advanced editor, by changing how Power BI reads it, it's literally going to tell me, but this is what it's going to do every single time. So it will always run it for FDI agree. And then, of course, here's my data type changed. And then everything that I said in the steps, this is the code. This is how Power BI reads your information. As an example, I'm going to remove this step here, but I'm going to do it manually. I'm going to say, take that out. We'll go to advanced editor. That's what it says. So it's saying, let this information in this one, because the source, everything starts there. But I am concerned more about this part because it's all in single quotes. It means it will always just equal that. But if I want to change it, I'm going to have to write a little bit of code here. The first type of code is I'm going to have to write an if statement. I'm going to tell it, you're going to execute this procedure if this client code, which is the SQL parameter, equals my parameter, or it has a value. So I'm going to go there, and I'm going to write hashtag if, and then what I'm going to do is let's just make it the same. And then I'm going to say if the client code equals, and I'm going to put a double quote. I'm just going to put some @ in there. This is some a little bit of coding, so you will have to understand what's going on here. And I'm going to say equals, and then I'm going to type in my parameter name, which is client code. I'm just going to type it in there for now. And then I'm going to say, I'm going to close the inverted commas, and I'm going to say @ or ampersand, and I'm going to say double quote there. All right. And now let me just have a look here on, oh, there's too many in there. And that's how you can create the code. So what I'm basically saying is execute the client sales procedure in SQL Server if the client code equals my parameter. And if I say done, it will run it. And now to say it wasn't recognized or it was make sure it's spelled correctly. Let me just see client account. Let's just say, oh, sorry, that's not the parameter. My apologies. It's client code is my parameter name. And now I'm going to say done. And now it's asking me, I need a permission to run this native database query. So it knows that I'm going to run it live, and I'm just going to say run it. And I've got my information. So what SQL Server or what Power BI did now is it took whatever was placed in there and ran it against the live database. Now that is very cool. Let me show you how to put this in practice. So once you're happy with everything, you can say close and apply. You can minimize it. We just wait for it to create the connection in the model. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to build a little report to explain to you why we'd want to use this. So first thing is first, just going to put a little card in here. We're going to go to our stored procedure, and we're going to put in customer name. And now we know it's AgriLink Food, and we're just going to click there. We're just going to rename this there to customer name. And then I'm going to maybe put a little table in there. And I'm just going to close it there. And we're going to do the exact same. We're going to put the amount, the cost, and we want to see it by day, by month, as an example. Then I perhaps want to place a filter in here to show for the year, because there are different years. So this is everything since the beginning of time for this one client. And then let's perhaps just close this one a little bit like this, copy paste, and I want to change this one to a line graph. And it's exactly as we did just now with our view. How cool is that? But now what I'm going to be able to do is just make it nice. And there we go. So now I can see all the information relevant to this client. I know they're making it a very profitable client. And now I don't want to see for AgriLink Food anymore. I want to see it for someone else now. You can go to transform data and you can click on edit parameters. So it's already reading it at an FDI Agri. But let's say I go choose another client. Let me just go here. So over here, let's say I don't want to check for FDI Agri. Let's say I want to check for this one as an example, a bar 10 day. So in this case, I don't know the clients very well, but let's say in your environment, they already know the client. This is where it would go into good practice. So if I minimize here and I paste it there and I say, okay, it's going to give me this alert there. And it's going to say, listen, there are pending changes to your queries. And I'm going to say apply changes. It's going to ask me to permission. You are approving that you are running this against the live database. So it has to give you this warning because maybe it's going to give you big changes. It might have big performance implications. So if you're happy with it, you can run it. But before I run it, look there. When we pasted this, it showed that FBI Agri. Now it's showing me the Arbor 10 day. And if I say run, it's running it live against the database now. And now everything just changed. That is what makes procedures so cool, running it parameterized procedures through Power BI. Because you can think if I had like 20 reports in here or 20 pages, and every single page represented something else towards the client analysis, all I had to do was just say edit parameters. So if I choose another client, let's take ABC Studios, I know they're quite big, and I go back here, minimize, and I run it. It's going to give me the same error or alert, not an error. I say apply changes, and now it's saying again, it changed it. How cool is that? Because I told the query that it must equal the parameter, it did it for me. And now I can simply say run. And it's evaluating, it's running 180 rows, and there's my new information. Let's just wait for it to run. And there we go. There's my new information. I think my laptop just got a little bit stuck there. And that is how cool it is. Why you'd want to use your views and procedures and run your procedure through Power BI. It's very, very interesting, especially parameterized. That concludes the second part of this 4-part series. I just want to say thank you for joining today. This was a little bit more technical, but I think it's a very, very informative video because it can really help everybody out there, especially if they want to understand what a procedure is, what it does, and how you can analyze the information using those procedures, and of course, how to create a view and manage it. I will be doing part 3 very soon, and that will be pivot tables in SQL and pivot tables in Power BI. And I also urge you to go follow us on all the social media platforms, especially YouTube. We have a lot of content out now. And thank you very much once again. And I hope you enjoyed part 2. And hope to see you in part 3. Thank you very much.